And welcome back. So as promised, next video in the series of removing the carpet in the interior. So I figured I'd bring you along and show you some of this. You can see that already that we've worked quite a bit on the driver's side. Got a lot of the trim pieces off, the column trim pieces, and so on and so forth that we need in order to get get the carpet up, and B, get the headliner dropped. As remember, we have maintenance items that are inside or on the back side of the headliner to get to. So I thought I'd show you some of this. A lot of Dodge's trim, and even through the various Ram lines, will kind of just pull up on its own. Once you kind of get them started, they'll pop up and not really have a fastener like these sill plates here, or these scuff plates or kick plates, whatever you want to call them. There we go. And you can see that just kind of pops up and then pulls out. That one's relatively straightforward. And you can just kind of work your way back here. And when you start running into items like this that have seat belts and such on them, then you kind of have to break those seat belt bolts loose to get like this upper piece of trim off. And the way they kind of interlock in, I found it best just to go ahead and remove this bolt that's here. And on the other side of this handle, let me show you that there. So there'll be a bolt behind this cover for this seat belt here. And then on the other side of this handle, and it's the same even on the driver's side, we kind of use driver's side as practice. Underneath these plastic covers, just pop them open and there'll be two bolts underneath here. So unbolt your seat belt, unbolt the two bolts here, and you should be able to start popping this upper piece of trim and this lower trim piece off. Now to show you this, in order to get your seat belt bolt out, and forgive the work, I gotta get up in here. This plastic cover, if you push in on your clips like you're going to adjust it like you see me doing here, and then grab your plastic cover, I found this easier to do from the bottom. Kind of work it loose a little bit. You'll feel it give a little bit, and then push in on those side adjustment tabs like you're going to raise or lower the back of the seat belt. And then when you do that, you can get your cover off. And then that's your big Torx bolt there to get your seat belt off. And so far, all the Torx bolts I've run into are all T50 Torx bolts, just like the same bolt size that bolts the seat belts to the sides of the two front seats. Let's see, so we cover the cover there, we cover the cover there. On the back here, same process. You got a little piece of plastic trim to pop up to get the rear seat belt bolt out from the top. And when you get to, and I'll show you this when we're ready here. Let me get you some light. When you get this bottom trim panel off of this rear air A-pillar, there's, if I remember correctly, let me look over the, yeah, I didn't remove it, but you'll see a little piece of plastic halfway up that's kind of holding the seat belt in place. On the driver's side front, I took it off of the plastic. I'll show you where that's at when we get this one off here, just so I could get this gray piece, because this gray piece slides in behind this piece here. So take this piece off, which should pop up, and then you can get your two bolts out here, your one mounting screw out here, and then work on getting this piece out next. So let's do that. So instead of jumping around, let me just give you another kind of a high level of what's left. So we got this piece here. We're going to pull up this kick trim here. This piece back here, but on the backs here, it gets rather interesting. This piece kind of slides into this lower piece here, so you have to work from the top of this rear one down in order to get this back piece off. Now remember, since we're taking the headliner off, we got another garment hook that needs to come off there, as well as the front trim piece here on the passenger side that has to come off because we need to get the headliner out. Plus we're going to be taking the dash out of this, if you remember, and changing out with the dash out of the other truck. And that also means in order to get the headliner off, the rear rear visor or the sun visor, just like you see on the driver's side. On the passenger side also needs to come off. And there's normal bolts on this side, and there's a T20 Torx that holds the hook part of the visor in place. So let me get these side covers popped off, expose the bolts behind it, get those bolts out, and we'll start taking this piece out next. This back kick plate you see here is all one piece. So you can kind of start to pull up on this, and if you're having trouble getting these started, let me grab a trim removal tool here. I like this one right here that kind of has a hook on it, kind of just to get it up underneath there. And you can see we can start to now pop that off, and you're only going to be able to take it so far because again it's hooked into this piece here, but that's enough to at least get it up and get it out of the way and get it out of this piece here that overlaps the piece we're going for. And as far as these sections here, to get these bolt covers undone, if you've got a small pocket screwdriver, it'll work great for this. If you prefer to use a trim removal tool so you don't risk marring up the plastic, you can do that as well. Just a really, really small, fine flat blade is what I prefer to use, because then I can get in there like this, as you can see, and just kind of pop this cover out of here. There we go. And you can see we got our bolt in there, so we're going to do the same thing here. Then we'll take this big Torx bolt out here, and I'll bring it back. And welcome back. So we just went ahead and popped our front piece trim off, and this just pulls forward from the center here. We got a bolt out for our seat belt that mounts it to our height adjustment. We got our 2 bolts out of our side handle here. And what this will do, as you can see, is just pull forward, and this will then drop down. Now there's a piece of plastic here that kind of holds the seat belt up, center place. That drops out pretty easy. You can then take this piece, drop it through this piece of trim, and that will allow you to take your trim piece and kind of push it off to the side. And what I'm doing with all the bolts you see here and the internal trim pieces is just putting them inside of just a little Ziploc container, so I can keep track of them. Most of these seat belt bolts, at least in this model truck that we're removing, you can see they're encapsulated, or I should say they got a little flat press in place washer, kind of like a little lock washer is what they are. And you can see it just holds that bolt in place and keeps it from going anywhere. So we got this off, we get this off. So this is now all out of the way of getting our roof liner removed. Now what we want to do is continue to work our way backwards towards the rear of the truck, is getting this piece of trim off of here. And again, we're only going to be able to take it about that far, and then we're going to have to stop. And what we want to do next is break this lower, again, Torx bolt loose for the seat belt. That will allow us to get this trim off completely. But remember, in the rear pillar here, again, at least for this make and model of Dodge, this top piece connects in behind this lower piece. So this piece needs to come off first. And what we want to do is take that Torx bolt out, pop this cover out of the way, and take the next Torx bolts out and basically drop the seat belt, and then we can get the rest of this trim off. So I'm going to get those 2 Torx bolts off, and I'll bring them back. And welcome back. So as we're getting your bolts broke loose, and you can see we got our lower seat belt bolt on this side and our upper one taken out at this point. Also underneath, a little piece of trim that you see right there. Let me get you some light. It's a little small Phillips screw. It's hidden right up there at the top. That will keep you from either A, removing this, or B, forgive the camera work, I gotta get up in here, or B, breaking this if you don't remove this screw and you try to force this out. It's just a little small Phillips. I'm probably going to drop this one again. I dropped the last one. But I also did down inside. Don't worry, it's easy to fish back out. Okay, so with that undone, we should now be able to finish popping the rest of our trim off. To get this piece out of here. There we go. And you can see there's some little pegs here that go into the body, so I'm gonna have to get up there and kind of push on the last remaining clips, which is on the inside here, to get this piece out. Maybe you could see it here, but you can see how this top piece has little plastic pins that pin into the bottom piece, so you kind of have to work this top piece loose first. That's what I was saying earlier. So let me go ahead and work on this and I'll bring you right back. And welcome back. So I went ahead and took the remaining of our trim pieces off. You can see that we've got our back trim removed at this point. Went ahead and took the two bolts out and removed the trim that makes up our, our assist handle or oh crap handle, however you want to call it. So it looks like the only thing left in our visor mount is also out of top. So it looks like the only thing holding our liner in at this point is just the rubber trim that goes around all four doors. So we should be able to break this seal, as you can see here, and get that pulled down here next. Let's see. So yeah, we'll continue to work on that to get it out of the groove of the seal on all four sides. Then we should be able to drop the headliner down, which, having the seats out of here makes this a much easier job to get up here and manipulate this headliner. So we'll get the headliner out of here, and then once that's done, we'll do a bit of cleanup, get some tools out of here, and then we'll see about getting this carpet up, because actually, let's see, no, we can't do carpet just yet. We need to get this lower trim bezel and cup holder and everything out of here, because our carpet, unfortunately, goes up midway. Yeah, goes up to about here, where you can see my hand all the way across. So we'll have to get this out of here next before we can get our old carpet out of here. So we're going to concentrate on that next. Again, just to show that to you, looks like it just rests in the groove of the weather stripping insulation around all four doors in this case. So we'll get that done. We'll get that dropped and we'll bring it back. There'll be one electrical connection we need to be mindful of, which makes up our dome light. So we'll have to disconnect that, and then once we have that dropped, we can get a better view of both the third eye brake light from the back side and that satellite antenna that we need to replace just to renew that seal. So let's get this headliner dropped and I'll bring you back. One moment. And welcome back. So you can see we got our headliner taken down, and that's pretty much the last step. Once you have all your trim pieces out, is that once you kind of get it off of this lip of insulation around all four doors, it will kind of just fall in place. Now you can see our wiring harness for our rear lights, as well as the wiring harness on the driver's side. I'll show you that are kind of hot glued in a couple of spots onto our headliner. I went ahead and broke that hot glue loose just so the wiring wasn't holding, although this is lightweight, it wasn't holding this headliner up. Now, unfortunately, because of how big this headliner is, it doesn't look like there's an easy way you can kind of contort this to get it out of here, even if you wanted to clean it. I don't know, maybe you can. I tried standing this up on end a couple of different ways, and I don't really want to bend this thing all too much, because it seemed like if you crease it too far, it'll crease, and then that'll be the end of it. But it kind of looks like this headliner is meant to go in and out, possibly with the, you know, the windshield removed. So it may be that in the factory, they put the headliner in and then they put the windshield in after the fact. Because again, you can kind of see, even with this pushed all the way back, even if you were to take this headliner and stand it up on end, you might be able to, if you tweak it just a little bit, to maybe kind of push it off to the side and kind of get it to maybe come out of the front or the rear driver's door. But like I said, it's kind of, I don't want to say brittle, but it kind of just feels like it's slightly heavier than like corrugated board would be. So I necessarily don't want to crease it too far and cause like a permanent bend in it. But you can see right there, that's just where the wiring was kind of hot glued in place, at least for the center dome light. And again, I just broke that away from the material. Yeah, it tore the paper in a couple of spots in the back, but no harm, no foul. It's not going to hurt anything. And when we go to reassemble it, I'll tack that wiring down in place in a couple of spots with some new Kapton tape. And that'll just keep the wiring from bouncing around as you're going up bumps and stuff in the truck. It'll just keep the wiring from bouncing between this and the cab and causing a bunch of noise, which is, I'm assuming, is the reason why they have that tacked down to begin with, and also for vibration. But we have access to the one item that we needed, and you can see here from the water spotting that we've got going on right about here, from that little dot you see there, looks like it's about where this satellite antenna comes out. So that's our electrical connection for our satellite antenna. That, of course, is our third eye brake light. And you can see that water line goes, you know, pretty much from corner all the way across to this corner, all the way across to here. But it looks like the majority of the spill maybe kind of starts in this area and then leaches its way forward on either side. I was kind of hoping I could maybe get this out and try to do a little bit of a cleanup on it, but after seeing that the back of this headliner is kind of like a heavy duty paper, just so you can kind of see that there with just a little bit of fabric and foam sandwiched on the other side, I really don't want to get this thing any more wet than what it actually already has been. But other than that, we're looking pretty good in here. You can see we got our side curtain airbags in here. So as you're doing this, definitely want to make sure that you've got the battery disconnected, and just be careful with what you're messing with here, because you do have you know, typical airbag squibs that are set up in here that, you know, when they go off, that's what deploys your side curtain airbags. And just getting you a better look on that. I don't see any corrosion or water spot. Well, a little bit of corrosion. Yeah, you can see it kind of flaking off there. Looks like there's a little bit of oxidation on that mounting nut for that satellite antenna. So that could very well be where our drip was coming from, or it could just be a side effect of, you know, water leaching this way and it just being a humid environment and getting that wet. But either way, now that we have access to the back side of it, we can get to it. We'll disconnect it. We'll pop that out and pop a new one in, as well as we'll pop in a new third eye brake light. Just definitively make sure that we've got those two issues replaced, and that should take care of our water leak. Anyway, but that's what it looks like. So we're going to get those two items replaced. Once they're replaced, we'll go ahead and push this headliner back up into position. And just like it was hanging before, we'll just use the foam. We'll use the rubber molding around all four doors just to kind of hold it into that groove that it was resting in. And it'll just hold it. And then will serve good enough to hold it up in place until we're done with the carpet and ready to put all of our side pillar trim back in. But yeah, not too bad. So once you definitely have all your seat belts out of the way, and you have all your upper trim piece is removed. Yeah, all it does is just kind of rest in the lip of the cardboard, on the lip of this rubber material, just kind of like you see the edge of that light doing. And then once you pull it away from that, it falls pretty free. But just be mindful that rear brake light connector harness is glued to the back side of this headliner, and the wiring coming off of the driver's side pillar comes up and it's glued to the back for your dome light. But anyway, I'll bring you back when we get ready to pop that new receiver antenna in place. With that being said, I'll bring you back in a bit. Bye. And welcome back. So we're just in the process of getting our old satellite antenna out of here. You can see, remember, the one electrical connection here. And it has a kind of like a couple things that hold it in place. On the bottom of it, it has this tripod looking piece with a bolt that bolts up underneath, and this holds it in from the back side. And this bolt was really, really loose. I was almost able to just basically spin this bolt out by hand with no issue. And you can see with that out of there, this will actually push up in place. All right. Fairly easy move by hand. Now there's some plastic tabs on the either side. It looks like we had to depress them to get that pushed the rest of the way out. And then we can kind of look at it and, you know, make sure that on the hood underneath where the antenna at is still looks good with no dings or imperfections in it. And then we'll look at getting our replacement in there. But I think if this one was the one that was leaking, like I said, with that mounting nut being as loose as it was and just being able to basically spin it out by hand, you could see it even had blue Loctite on it, that, yeah, that would have definitely been loose enough to cause a leak, seeing as that even with the even with the plastic tabs in there, that you can see how much that antenna will move. So not a very tight seal if that is loose, but let's finish getting the rest of that out and then we'll take a look at it. One moment. Okay, so now that we got our satellite antenna removed, just wanted to show you that here. So this was the clip that goes this way on the bottom of this unit, and it has those plastic clips that clip to the inside of the hood of the cab. And you can see that this one's actually even split as far as that plastic retainer is concerned. And then it's got this bolt with this little tripod piece that we were talking about earlier that bolts down like this on top of here, and this is what grabs hold of the inside of the roof and basically pulls this down. And the new unit does come with a new bolt, a new retaining clip, and a new one of those plastic clips. See what you can see there. So it does come, it comes not only with the new antenna mount, but basically all the hardware as well. I'm just comparing both the old unit and the new unit, and they are the same. Now, in this application, it's not critical that this satellite antenna actually function, because we're not looking at reactivating the Sirius XM on this particular truck. I just wanted have the correct seal in here, or the correct antenna in here, so that way we would have the correct mounting hardware, as well as be able to have the correct sealing assessment on here, to, again, just to make sure that that was where our water was coming in at, that, you know, we had the leaks taken care of. Plus, you know, it is nice to put the factory unit back in there, so if there ever is a need to re-enable the satellite antenna, meaning the Sirius XM capabilities of this radio, then we can. So what I'm going to do is just take this bolt out and this fastener out, and what happens is it just clips in from the roof down, And then we'll put this fastener back on and get it torqued to spec. I need to look up and see what the torque spec on that fastener is, because again, we don't want too little torque where our seals don't engage, and we don't want too much torque where we inadvertently break something. Both would be bad. So I'm going to go look up that torque spec, look on getting this replaced. And another thing that we can do is, I'll show you that part number again. I think I showed it to you before in a previous video, but for this particular application on this truck, you can see the part number there. And again, this is for the satellite antenna module. And then let me pause you real quick, and then we'll take a quick climb up to the top of the cab, and I'll show you what that surface underneath that antenna looks like. I just want to make sure it doesn't have to be cleaned up of any debris before we put that new antenna into place. One moment. And welcome back. So you can see where it sits. You can see where that seal was obviously sitting, because it did keep some dirt out of the way. We will clean. I will come in here with some cleaner and clean all this residual dirt off before we go to putting the new unit in place, but not too bad. Just poke it through and re-secure it. So we're going to take care of that, and I'll bring you right back. And welcome back. So you can see we got our new unit in. We got our fastener and bolt in and tight. There is no torque spec, or at least the book didn't list one. They said just to tighten that up. So I can already tell you, with that new bolt tightened down, I can't wiggle it side to side. Remember in a previous video when we were diagnosing this leak, I was able to grab this and able to kind of take it by hand and move it from side to side. And what happens is, when you're tightening that bolt, the 3 metal fingers on this adapter here, as it comes down over these 3 points, you can kind of see here, as this bolt tightens up, it pushes this down, these push out, and when those fingers push out, you can see where they kind of make contact with the cab. So that's in there, it's secure, it's nice and tight. We're going to go ahead and make our reattach our internal electrical connection, and then we'll tackle the third eye brake light next. One moment. And welcome back. So typically on these third eye brake lights, it's just 2 Phillips screws, one on either side. And depending on the year model that you have, it may be sealed with butylene, or it may not. Typically on these older 1500s, they are not. And these third eye brake lights are pretty common and pretty prone to leaking. And I can tell you right now, this one's, yeah, it's pretty loose. So you can see there, yeah, that old seal is just smashed completely flat in a couple of spots. And the reason why we got a bunch of slack in here, remember, we've got the wire pulled off of the headliner on there, so typically you won't have quite that much. But if you remember in the previous video, when we first started getting parts in for this truck, we went ahead and just got a whole new unit to put back here, a whole replacement unit. And as you can see, the difference in the thickness of that seal versus what we're taking off, and you can see just how smashed flat that seal is around the corners. It just, you know, due to vibration and heat and age, just over time. So I'm going to go ahead and get this switched out and get it screwed back in place, and we should be good. So I'll bring it back in a moment. So we got a third eye brake light replaced. We were showing you earlier electrical reattached, and that's just to show you more of that wiring that was kind of hot glued to the top of the headliner. Now, if you're going to do the satellite antenna, and definitely if you're going to do the third eye brake light, you don't have to drop the headliner to do it. We were dropping the headliner to see if we could actually get it out of the truck and clean it. And as you can see from the kind of the angle and the width that it's in, you would have to fold one of these ears a pretty good amount to get it out through the existing door, because you don't have the room to get it in here at enough of an angle to even get it to kind of sneak it out the back door here without risk, you know, permanently putting a crease or a fold in it. cab light that I wanted to show you earlier again. You can see it's wiring. It was just kind of hot glued slash taped in place again to the back of the liner. And it's just it's a 3-position plug, but they only use 2 of the wires for it. You just pop the cover down and pop out a clip on the inside of the light, and that'll allow you to remove the entire assembly from the headliner. But since we have the headliner down and it is easy to it is easily accessible, we're going to see if we can try a couple of different types of cleaner, or a combination of cleaners, at least on this little bit of, because again, it's mostly kind of like a heavy duty cardboard, for lack of a better word, like a paper backing that's got a little bit of foam and a little bit of fabric, of course, on the interior side of it. So we're going to try a couple things and see if we can get rid of any of that water stain or not before we go to mount this back up in place. So we've got a steamer. We're contemplating trying that, and maybe trying a couple other things. If we can't get it out, again, like I said earlier, no harm, no foul. It kind of fits with the character of the truck. But since we went through the effort of dropping it, you know, we'll at least see if we can get it to clean it. And once we get ready, like I said, we'll hoist it back up. We'll put it back in the position where the door seals are holding it in place, and that will allow us to get our final fuel bolts out of our seat belts for the front driver and passenger that are here in the floor. And then we'll start to tear apart the center part of this dash, and hopefully then be able to pull any clips out that we need, and maybe get this work on getting this carpet rolled up and go on with the next piece. But until then, it'll be a couple moments for you, but maybe a few days for me. But I'll talk to you in a bit. Bye. And welcome back. So I went ahead and just put our headliner back up temporarily, just by resting it back inside the parts of the door frame seal that it would rest in all four. And it, you know, again, does a pretty good job of holding itself up there kind of once you get it started. We also went through and took our 2 remaining seat belt bolts out from the floor, which were these here, 1 on each side. Again, same T50 Torx bit it's been for all of our seatbelt bolts. And we also took our lower piece of trim here off of our dash to kind of get it up off our carpet. And I think at this point, that's about everything that we needed to remove in order to get our carpet out here. Well, actually, it looks like we've got some Christmas tree clip type hold downs, which hopefully you can see them there. For instance, looks like, you know, looks like there's one right there, and there's a couple of them that go across the ends that we need to remove to get a carpet out of here. But with all that removed, we should be able to, kind of start pulling at our carpet like this and rolling our carpet out of here, kind of seeing what the underside of the floor looks like. And yeah, you can hear, looks like it's kind of stuck in place at spots, but it being 2009, you know, doesn't surprise me. It might be a little bit stuck, but again, I think we've got everything out of the way as far as all the bottom trim, seatbelt hardware, seats, obviously. So I'm going to just get a clip removal tool. I'm going to remove, you can see the kind of that one sticking out from the back there. I'm going to remove those few Christmas tree clips that are left around that perimeter, and then we'll work and see if we can get the carpet, start rolling the carpet up out of here. And with that being said, I'll bring you back in a bit. One moment. And welcome back. So I just want to show you this. Found another fastener underneath the passenger seat here. This is it's got a shoulder on it, and this is a T30 Torx bolt. And what this helps to fasten down is if you still have, or rather use or still have, the original factory jack that typically fastens itself up underneath the passenger seat. It gets clipped in place by this bolt, which has a little bit of piece of kind of like a rubber coating on the shoulder to keep it from vibrating. But that unfortunately screws through a hole in the carpet, so that little fastener has to come out as well. So again, T30 underneath the passenger seat. use to help hold down the factory jack. So I'm going to get back on to seeing is there anything else that needs to be removed to get the carpet out of here, and I'll bring you back. We did get all the Christmas tree clips out of the back that you can see there. And I'll bring you back in a moment. And welcome back. So we're in the process of just pulling this out of here, and because the carpet, from what I'm finding, goes pretty good ways up the firewall, at least on the driver and the passenger side, and you've got your pedals here to deal with, it looks like it's easier just to kind of grab the hole right here that the front driver's seat would have bolted through, grab it, and just pull up like you see me doing here, and then maybe take a section of the center console and also pull back on that as well. And it looks like you can, hopefully you can see that we can get the carpet to, you know, slide out this way from underneath those pedals rather than trying to, you know, get up in here and fold it back and fight with it. So that's what I'm going to continue to do, is just grab sections of this carpet and just kind of fold it backwards and peel it back until we get everything out of here. Just be careful that when you're pulling this out, that you go ahead and take your wiring harnesses like this and just pull them through the openings in the carpet that you already have, just so that the connectors and the wiring doesn't get pulled and potentially damaged. There we go. So got that one out of the way, and we got the one on the passenger seat out of the way. So that, again, that's what we're going to work on. I'm going to get on the other side there and just, again, pull it backwards and just continue doing that until at least we can get this piece out of here. So I'll bring you back in a moment. And welcome back. So once we had the passenger side kind of pulled out, and so far I'm not finding any spot where it's, you know, Christmas tree clipped up underneath the firewall anywhere, anything of that nature. And once we have the passenger side out here, it kind of seems just to naturally want to unfold, as you can see here, kind of out this way and, you know, towards the driver's side and the rear driver's side door. But just to show you, I did not place those there. Found yet another pile of change. Been finding all kinds of change, as you know throughout this series, underneath seats and such, and now I found another pile of them underneath the front carpet. So anyway, that's where we're headed for. I'm just gonna, as you can see here, I can grab this whole piece here, and what we may be able to do at this point, now that we're clear of the front here, once we clear the front driver's side pedals over there, we may just be able to kind of fold the carpet together, you know, like a taco or a burrito, and just kind of roll it up and pull it out of one of the doors. But so far, again, like I'm saying, at least on this make and model, I'm not seeing any spot where it's been Christmas tree clipped, like up underneath the firewall or to another component. And of course, that's our passenger side airbag connector. And unfortunately, I do not see where, you know, the wiring harness or an unused pigtail may have been living for us to tap power, as well as the I should say power, at least for the passenger seat, as far as the power functions. A little bit of a tangent, and we'll get more into this when we do the wiring, but remember, the heated and ventilated seats the passenger side gets it gets its power from the driver side heated seat module. So we may have to, again, just kind of, when we get ready to take our parts donor, the interior apart as far as the carpet, we may have to just kind of dissect the harness a little bit and at least get that section of harness available that has that pre-existing wiring that goes from the wiring connector on the passenger side to the wiring connector on the driver's side. And then once we have that, all we have to worry about is the necessary but the necessary bus that we're going to need to tap into and just run some power down in here. But we'll get into more of that when we get into the wiring finishes that are needed. And you can see here, I can just kind of pick up on the back of this now and just fold the whole thing over like a big old pancake. So should be pretty straightforward to get the rest of this out. And yes, and you can see all the debris and the dirt and the associated stuff that kind of, you know, makes its way up underneath carpeting after X number of years. And of course, we'll obviously vacuum and clean all this out before we go to put the new one in. So we want to vacuum, we're going to clean, we'll get the new wiring harnesses and any wiring taken place and seated to where it needs to be before we put the carpet in. And we'll obviously get the remainder of the dash and everything out of here. But I don't think I'm going to, I'll obviously, I'll video, I should say we will video the install of the new dash from our 2010, but I already have videos on the channel if you're interested that shows us taking the dash out of a 2009 1500, which would be very, very similar to what you're going to see here with this dash removal. So I won't bore you with filming all of the dash removal in this video on this one, but it won't be in this video. It should be in a subsequent video. I'll bring you back when we have the dash pulled apart and all the old pieces out of here, and just as we're getting ready to install what will be the new dash into this vehicle. Because remember, we're taking the dash, the center console and everything out of our donor RAM and putting it into this RAM. So there'll be a front bracket that we'll have to transfer over from our donor RAM, and there should be a rear bracket that we're going to have to steal as well in order to pull that off. But again, that'll be more into the details of it when we start doing the install. But for now, let's get the rest of this carpet out of here. And here's yet another penny. And we're just going to add it to our change collection. And when we're finally done with all the interior work, and we put this truck on the road to drive it before we get to the performance parts of doing the engine modifications, then we'll tally it up at that point as to exactly how much change we've been able to find between these two 1500s. So I'm going to go ahead and work on getting the rest of the carpet out, and I'll bring you back one moment. And welcome back. So you can see we've got our carpet out. So yeah, it wasn't too terrible once we rolled it over from the passenger side and kind of folded everything together. Got the remaining bits and pieces out from underneath our pedals. Everything folded out. We were able to get it out in pretty much in one piece with no issue. So it wasn't being held down in any other location by any other fasteners or Christmas tree grips other than the remaining ones in the back. And that one bolt that we found underneath the passenger seat again that holds the jack in place. And yeah, we got a little bit of cleanup to do. We need to get in and do some vacuuming, clean a bunch of dirt out, finish removing our dash. And then once we get that done, we can work on getting the wiring in here that we need to get in place that unfortunately is currently missing in order to get our new front driver and passenger seats to hopefully work okay. But don't worry, I had a plan for that. If we didn't find like an unused or capped off section of harness here, no harm, no foul. Now, again, what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at what we got in our blue donor RAM out there as far as what we can salvage from its wiring harness. This connector you see here, which is underneath the driver's seat, this one actually goes to a plug that will come out of the new center console we're going to put in, and it'll plug into this one. This one, if you remember the one we had to cut, that was the airbag feed. We're going to have to do some work with that. And this one was the only other plug on the driver's side, and that was for monitoring the seat belt. So it's missing, some additional powers and grounds that would typically be there to feed our new seat, which, we have to accommodate for. So we'll have to address that. And again, what I'm going to do is on that one as well is see about taking what we can out of our donor RAM as far as salvaging its connector, because the connector we take out of our donor ram will match the seats, because that's where our seats came from, and then we can just cut ourselves a pretty good length of pigtail and splice in whatever wiring we need, you know, and still utilize a factory connector to do so. And don't worry, once we get it all done, we'll get it all wrapped up and loomed off, and it'll look like a hopefully look like a nice piece of factory equipment when we're done with it. But you can see we found another pile of change underneath the driver's side section of carpet here to go along with the pile of change you saw earlier there, and remnants of probably what is some kind of bug carcass that was underneath the carpet on the driver's side here. Don't worry, we'll get all that vacuumed and cleaned out. We got some debris underneath our pad in the back. Now the new carpet only goes as far as just like the OEM carpet did. So the new carpet we bought doesn't include a new piece to go here in the back inside these little cutouts for the cubby holes in the back seat, unfortunately. My only concern there, if you remember when we first started on this, was since we had the water leak that was either coming from our satellite antenna or our third eye brake light, was that it kept dripping down here and filling this area here with water. So I just wanted to get underneath here, which we can now easily do, and you can see that we don't have any water, rust, things of that nature. It actually looks fairly good, fairly nice underneath here. So that's a concern that's been alleviated. And you can see some more of these wood screws. I've been finding them all underneath the carpet. Someone definitely used this, I would say, for probably, this truck was probably used for construction work, maybe carpentry, something on that nature. Been finding all kinds of these really, really coarse wood screws throughout this truck underneath. Anyway, like I said, we'll get it cleaned up, we'll get it out of here, and I think we're going to call this one a video at this point because we're getting pretty long. So what we covered in this one was, if you remember, was removing all of our trim, lower and upper pillar trims, all of our seat belts, and we dropped the headliner. Now it's up there. We're going to drop it again when we go to clean the back of it, but for now it's just up there temporarily. So we dropped the headliner with the anticipation to be able to try to get it out of this truck, but it's just too awkwardly sized. If we scrunched it down a little bit on the sides, we may be able to kind of kick it off at an angle and get it out the either front passenger or rear driver's door. But I don't want to put a permanent crease in this because it is fairly old, and the backing material on this is getting fairly crunchy, and I don't really want to replace this because, like I said in the previous video, these are absurdly expensive. But again, we dropped this, we replaced our satellite antenna so that way it has a nice fresh good seal on it. We replaced the third eye brake light so it has a nice good fresh seal on it, and as you obviously can see, we went ahead and got the carpet out of here. So been a long enough video at this point. We'll cut it at this one, and the next time we bring you back, we'll show you very similar to what the underside of the carpet in our donor ram looks like, because remember, we had needed to start chasing down the missing bits of the wiring harness that we need, where we're going to tap in power from, where we're going to tap in communications from, and then we need to get that dash out of here and prep for taking the dash out of the blue one and getting it ready to go. So I think the next step that we'll cover is we'll start tearing the blue one down, our donor ram at this point, getting all of its trim up, its carpet, pull its dash out, and that way we can get everything cleaned up and get everything prepped for reassembly, and then we'll concentrate on our wiring. So that way, once we get our wiring done, we can put our carpeting in, start reassembling our dash, and hopefully just let it go like dominoes. But for now, that's all I got for you, and I'll bring you back on the next one. If you have not subscribed, please consider doing so. For those of you that have already subscribed, I thank you. We are rapidly approaching upon the 1,500 subscriber count, which is awesome. And with that being said, I'll let you go, and I'll bring you back for the next one. Thank you much. Bye.